Hi friends, hello. So, here we are once again with the NPTEL online course on employment communication, a lab based course. Today we are going to complete the topic on verbal communication, and this is lecture 5. So, yesterday we had completed with a video, a funny video, and today we are going to begin with certain constructs, certain paradigms which influence language, and the first of these is culture. So, here we are going to talk about culture and language. Now, actually culture influences the way we use words, because as most people who study communication know, there is one famous phrase for those who study communication, which is culture is communication, communication is culture. What we mean is the entire idea of culture can be subsumed in one term, which is communication, and entire communication begins with culture. So, communication is culture, culture is communication. So, having established or having spoken about the importance of culture in language, a means of communication, let us talk about the phrase dominant culture. By dominant culture, we mean the culture which is in power, or in other words the mainstream culture. Let us say, to give you an example, the American culture. Then within the great country, the great subcontinent called America or the United States, we have co-cultures. Now, co-cultures are subcultures. Subcultures in the sense of, let us say, within the continent of America, we have African Americans, Hispanics, drug dealers or the drug community, and so on and so forth. So, the co-cultures or the subcultures are a group of people who have a culture of their own outside of the dominant culture. So, we have now for you an important research finding to buttress our understanding of culture and language. This is called the SapirWhorf hypothesis. Sapir and Whorf hypothesized that the labels we use help to shape the way in which we think, our perception of the world, and our entire behavior. So, in other words, what Sapir and Whorf say is that the world we experience shapes the language we speak, and the language we speak, on the other hand, sustains our perception of reality or the world and our view of the world. So, the belief that the labels we use shape the way in which we think, our perception of the world, and our behavior as such. Now, the SapirWhorf hypothesis has two threads. The first thread of the SapirWhorf hypothesis is that linguistic determinism. Linguistic determinism is defined as the belief that language influences how we interpret the world. So, I mean that suppose my mother tongue is Hindi, and the way in which I interpret the world even when I go to other places where I am not using Hindi as a means of communication. The point is, all my experiences of the world, of what I see, what I do, what I experience, will be determined by my basic linguistic tool, that is Hindi. The second thread of Sapir-Whorf hypothesis is linguistic relativity. Now, this is the belief that persons who speak different languages perceive the world differently. So, this is in fact well understood, and this is relative. This is in fact related to the previous thread of linguistic determinism. The idea which I want you to understand from this concept of linguistic relativity is that because language is so seminal to communication, and because language is the first important major part of culture, therefore, the way in which we perceive the world is shaped by the language we use. So, a native speaker of English will be viewing the world differently, experiencing it differently than a non-native speaker of English, because their languages are different and this language is deeply embedded in our culture, in the way in which we live, we experience, we view and we shape our world. This is what Sapir and Whorf have proposed to us. Now, the point is that because of these cultural differences, sometimes there can be confusions in translating, or word by word if we try to translate some concepts or some ideas from one language to another, because each culture will have their own seminal, basic or major language. The last point which I would like to stress to you is that culture also influences our communication styles. Since I believe that we will know our country India the best, and in India you have heard of a town of the capital city of Uttar Pradesh called Lucknow, and Lucknow or the Nawabi culture or the Awadhi culture is known for one word, which is tashrif, which is the way in which they have the etiquette and manners, how they communicate with each other. So, Lucknowi tahjeeb or Lucknowi etiquette is the communication style of the people who have the Awadhi culture or the Nawabi culture in them. Moving next to the idea that at times language can be used with the motive of prejudice, and that is called prejudice talk. There are two types of prejudice. The first is linguistic prejudice. Linguistic prejudice is the use of prejudiced language. For example, in the US now it is illegal, inhuman, inhumane and in fact discriminatory to use the letters or the words Negro or nigger for the African Americans as such. Now, if we continue using these words, that means that we are linguistically prejudiced against the African American or the black races. And if we talk about prejudice talk is defined as the language which communicates a negative bias. I have one example to give you. In US courts, they have decided that the phrases, for example, you people or they, the other people. Some of these phrases like you the people or the other people, these phrases you the people, the other people, these phrases communicate a negative bias, because it implies that you is different from we, it is not part of us, and the other people are some who are not like our people, they are the other people. So, prejudiced language is language which communicates a negative bias. Moving next to the concept of globalization. So, in this lecture, in the second part of verbal communication continued and going to be completed today, we have covered first culture and then we are going to talk about globalization. Culture and language, we continue with globalization. Now, the importance of globalization can be gauged by the fact that more and more countries are switching over to using English. The popularity of Hollywood and the internet are responsible for making globalization and culture coalesce. So, the effect of Hollywood and the effect of internet is found in the way in which we use our language. For example, we have an example here of hip hop and rap talk. Now, those of you who are conversant with the music and who like listening to music would have heard of Eminem, a singer who is using hip hop and rap talk. So, hip hop in fact is a social community. Hip hop is defined as a social community that uses rap, and rap is a special language. Now, if we have to talk about rap talk, if we have to talk about rap talk is a specialized language which unites the body and the brain. So, those of you who would like to know about the effect of culture, the effect of globalization on language, and would like to understand further hip hop and rap talk, you can perhaps try to see a music video of Eminem in YouTube. Now, we come to the third aspect. We have covered culture, globalization, and now we come to gender and language. The third one, the third construct which impacts language is gender. And you know, as such that language is a means of communication in which sexism is most vociferously, most openly reflected. So, for example, there are some people who would say, who would use the male component of the word instead of a generalized or general term. They would say, for example, manpower, chairman, so on and so forth, whereas the right and the gender free word, the gender neutral word would be chairperson and simply human power or power as such. So, also we have such terms as policeman, or we do not say policewoman, but the point is we can simply say police officer, so that there is no sexism in our language. If we come next to gender and speech style, then you know, males and females, or the masculine and the feminine gender, have different speech styles, totally different from each other. Women are more tentative and fidgety in their speech style. The spoken communication of women is constituted of three main parts which are given here. The first is qualifiers. Qualifiers, that is tentative phrases. Most women would like to or would generally be speaking tentatively, not sure, not confident, not exact or precise, not being so forceful enough. For example, they would say, I suppose we should present the report right in the beginning. Don't you think so? And this brings us to tag questions. Tag questions are defined as questions which is somewhere between an outright statement and a yes no question. So, in other words, a woman would say, I think it's a pleasant day, comma, isn't it? So, a woman might say, I think it's going to rain today, isn't it? The pause in between for the comma in writing. Now, it is the male counterpart who can say, it's going to rain today, full stop, concrete, exact, precise, powerful. But the woman would have tag questions generally in their speech style. The third component of speech style, as we consider the gender differences of language use, is disclaimers. Disclaimers are remarks which diminish the importance of a statement. To give you an example, a lady or only a female would say, I have said everything about the importance of x, y, z, but dot dot dot. In other words, a lady or a female would speak about the importance of something, and after the but, and it is a big but with a capital but, B-U-T, he or she would speak. She would speak at length about the unimportance of that, what she has already spoken the importance about. So, let us move further, and we have here Deborah Tannen, a researcher in language and language use. She has coined a term called genderlects, and this is her term for language differences attributed to gender. We have covered in the previous slide that the speech style of females or the feminine gender is characterized by qualifiers, tag questions and disclaimers. Deborah Tannen uses the term genderlects for such kind of language differences which can be attributed to gender. And what she says is quite important. She says that while women use language for connection and intimacy, men use language for status and power. I repeat, women use language for connection and intimacy, and men use language for status and power. So, as such, we know that the woman is the more soft, warm of the two, whereas the male or the masculine, the male of the species stands for power, status and strength. Now, moving on to the topic of language and power. You know that the way in which we use language can make us seem powerful or weak. So, language is a means by which we can reflect the power in us. Actually, if you note, men and women have the potential to influence the way others perceive them by communicating in ways that make them appear more, first confident, second forceful, third in control of a situation. So, whether it is a man or a woman, in fact, it is not that the world does not have women leaders or woman power or female leaders, we have many to name. But the point is, these female leaders or these leaders who are now at several important positions in the world as well, Angela Merkel, you know, the president of Germany. So, these women, I have named only one, or these men can communicate the power they wield through language, so that they are made to appear more powerful because they possess confidence, force, and they are in control of situation. Let us come to then what happens if we are not able to use language properly. You know the common term miscommunication. You see, research has proved that one word may have as many as 20 meanings. So, it is not certain that a word has only one meaning. Even if you pick up any common dictionary and just flick any page and look at any word, you will have at least 2, 3 or 2, 3, 4 meanings. One may be the verb form, one may be the noun form, one may be the word used as an adjective, the same word with the same spelling. So, I am saying that research has proved that words may have as many as 20 meanings, and therefore, there is bound to be communication. Now, let us study the patterns of these miscommunication, which arise because the words have differences in meaning. The first is that which is called bypassing. Bypassing is called thus because the idea is that two people or two meanings pass by each other, they pass parallel to each other, and this leads to confused meanings. So, bypassing occurs when individuals think that they understand each other, but actually they are missing each other's meaning. To give you an example of this, there was an episode recently in a conference where a person went on speaking, a manager perhaps went on speaking about overhauling something. He kept on using the word overhaul, overhauling, and the other person who was in debate was using the phrase small changes. And finally, when they were questioned and cross questioned and they spoke at length, it turned out to be that one man's overhauled had the same meaning as small changes. So, this is an example of bypassing, when the individuals think that they are understanding each other, but they are missing each other's actual meaning. Then miscommunication occurs because we use language to evade or we use language to express emotions. Number 2 after bypassing is evasive and emotive language. So, under this comes a phrase or a word called euphemism. Euphemistically speaking, you have heard it in common day parlance or language. Euphemism is defined as substitution of a pleasant word in place of a less pleasant one. For example, if we are speaking about somebody's death, we say he or she passed away. We do not mean that he or she passed away or by, we mean he or she is no longer alive. So, another example is of somebody who has been fired from the job, somebody who is no longer on the payrolls of the company, and the euphemism for that is dehired or put on temporary idling, idling. So, instead of saying that somebody is hired, which is sounding rude, rough, comes as a shock that somebody has lost his job, we use the phrase, we use the euphemism, the words, the person has been dehired or is temporarily idling, idling. Then let us come to politically correct language. This is in fact the way in which we would try to be exact in using language, and we have to tell you in this context some quite funny words. For example, the definition of lazy, or instead of using lazy, if we have to use politically correct language, we would use the phrase motivationally deficient. So, you can understand that motivationally deficient is politically correct for the word lazy, because a lazy person is deficient in motivation. So, also for the word fat, we use the word in fact horizontally challenged. We use the word horizontally challenged for somebody who is fat, and it applies, it is understood, it is politically correct for fat. So, we have the word ugly, for example, somebody who is not beautiful, ugly, and a politically correct word for it is cosmetically different, cosmetically different, and these sound quite funny, but the point is they are politically exact, politically precise or politically correct language. Then let us come to another feature of the world today, our use of language today. I am not comparing my times with your times, but all of us are aware that profanity and obscenity have become part of common day language use. I think it is a matter of concern if we are not able to remove swear words, 4-letter words, bad language and bad words from our normal communication, whether at the workplace or at homes. So, when I speak about profanity and obscenity being very much a disturbing fact of today's world and the way in which we are, I think we are misusing language when we are incivil, because we are in effect coercioning the language. We are not finishing up the language, we are not giving language a touch of finesse, F-I-N-E-S-S-E. We are not giving it a touch of fineness, purity, but we are misusing language when we use such words which are profane and obscene. So, let us now think critically about language. Towards the conclusion of this lecture number 5, verbal communication, I would like to propose to you how can you make language work for you. That is, I mean that how can you use language as a powerful tool, because language is the means of communication. Of course, we know that is a basic definition of language. Remember, language is the most powerful aspect of your culture, and when you are speaking and writing, language is bound to in fact impact how the others perceive you. If you have to think critically about language, I think you take a call on 2 counts. First is use your common sense, and the second is be clear. Take these two points, remember them, give them importance and prosper. In fact, be very confident with using language. The third aspect which we want to talk about today is technology. We have talked about gender, culture, now technology. When we talked about gender, culture, we also talked about globalization. Now, number 3 is technology and language use. Here, I would like to mention the recent important word online speak, and this is the impact of technology so much in our language use that we have started writing on the net as if we are speaking. So, for example, somebody wrote we too will be coming, and he wrote or he typed we too, the digit 2, we too will be coming, and he wrote this in a formal communication, a formal email, and I do not think this is taken in the right spirit, in the right way by somebody who is in the formal context related to you, maybe your superior or your boss or your peer. So, next is therefore a need to understand netiquette, that is how to observe etiquette on the net, the rules of the internet. For most of you who will be part of the employee workforce in the future, at that time you will be doing employee communication. This course is titled employment communication, that is before you get employment, what are the 3 stages by which you get into the workforce. Employee communication now is what you will do when at the workplace, when you are employed. Formal emails, reports, inventories, insurance lists, so on and so forth. And of course, the most common being email. When we talk about email, we have one advice to offer you: never write the phlegm mail, never write anything on the mail which can inflame, enrage or anger the other, because if somebody reads what you write or what is inflammatory or what angers him or her, remember one thing, that what you send on email can never be recalled. So, if you are angry over something and you want to communicate that, make a draft, keep it, sit over it, think over it, let some time pass. Next day you think about it and you see the more drafts you make, finally your anger will cool and the phlegm mail, the phlegm email will not be written. Phlegm mail is what we learn about in netiquette, how to observe the rules of writing on the net. In conclusion, I have certain guidelines for developing the language skills for us, each one of us. First is identify how labels affect your behavior. Labels are meaning for words. Labels are the meanings you attach to words. If certain words affect you, be aware, be conscious of that. For example, we have 2 instances here. First is snarl words, words with highly negative connotations, isn't it? For example, if an African American is called nigger, N-I-G-G-E-R, that is a snarl word for him or her. On the other instance, we have purr words, words with highly positive connotations. We continue further. Remember that the more you experience, the more meanings you can get from words or language, and you must be conscious and sensitive enough to identify how your experience can affect meaning, how that meaning can be communicated through words or language, and how you should use language to that effect. Lastly, in this slide, be sure that meanings are shared. If you want to communicate something, come down to the language competence level of the other. Do some paraphrasing, do some questioning, and be sure that what meaning you want to communicate has been shared or sent to the other. We continue further. So, language is a unified system of symbols that permits sharing of meaning, and there is no direct relationship between words and things, as we have said in our lecture yesterday. Words and things are related by thought. I am talking about the triangle of meaning by Ogden and Richards. A serious barrier to communication occurs when we forget the fact that words have both types of meaning, 2 types of meaning. First is denotative meanings, which are generally agreed because they are the content of the dictionary, they are the dictionary meaning of the words. And the second is the highly individualized connotative meanings, which is based on our attitudes, preferences and emotions. Culture and gender influence the way men and women experience, process and use language. And this has been covered in this lecture. And apart from culture, gender, the way in which we view the other gender, the way in which we have our attitudes towards the other gender, whether male or female, influences the way in which we use language. Then among the communication problems that result from changes in meaning are, first is bypassing, secondly mistaking a label for the thing itself, and therefore the advice that to avoid miscommunications or problems of miscommunication arising from changes or differences in meanings, I think it is a call to use our common sense to recognize what type of language, what style, quality of language would be appropriate at what time, in what place, I mean in which situation. Be concerned about the context. So, at a specific context, at a specific time, a specific language would be appropriate. The last call is to make yourself clear, the call to clarity. I think the advice is to use plain simple terms so that the meaning is more or less common. If you are going to use high flown bombastic terms, number 2, if you are going to use jargon or specialized vocabulary, then there are bound to be miscommunications because of changes in meaning as understood by the other and as used by you as a speaker or writer. Remember also that how we communicate online, that is our internet presence and our use of language over the internet, frequently differs from how we communicate in person, because the net or the internet is machine assisted language use, whereas face to face communication or the way in which we communicate person to person is more down to earth, practical, real, and therefore more natural. These are few of the references I have used in preparation of this lecture, lectures 4 and 5 on verbal communication. Thank you and God bless you. We will meet again with non-verbal communication.